God is a Voluntarist, a blog written by James Riddle, the Christian alchemist. I claim to be a Christian because I believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jeshua of Nazareth. I believe he is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. But what does that really mean? If you Google the number of Christian denominations, you'll find there are more than 45,000. Clearly, claiming to be a Christian is a deeply personal matter, and not as cut and dried as some might believe. To truly understand someone's beliefs, you have to ask them, and if you ask me for a thorough explanation of my beliefs, you're liable to find category number 45,001. Truly, I am not your average Christian. I refer to myself as a sort of Christian alchemist. I follow the core teachings of Jesus and see the nature of God reflected in creation itself. Sola scriptura, scripture alone, is not my mantra. Instead, I am an observer, striving for honesty in what I observe. My observations reveal that principles from works like Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, Ernest Holmes's The Science of Mind, Jose Silva's Silva Mind Control, and the Kybalion, among others, align remarkably well with the teachings of Christ. Together, they provide a framework for understanding how the world works, and through practical application, I found these principles to be extremely effective. When it comes to the existence of God, we can simply trace any energy frequency back to its original source. As physicist Max Planck famously said, all matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. This isn't a religious assertion. It's an observation rooted in contemplation. Consciousness and intelligence must have an original source, as must all things. Through this, we can begin to understand that source. From observation and contemplation, it becomes evident that freedom is a fundamental aspect of universal law. Everything and everyone is inherently free to act as they will, limited only by external forces. Whether you acknowledge it or not, you are completely free in the eyes of God. You can act as you choose, but so can everyone and everything else. You are free to walk among lions, and they are free to eat you. You are free to punch your neighbor in the face, and they are free to shoot you. We can argue the morality of it all day long, but the freedom to do it is undeniable. Even in captivity, you retain freedom of thought and movement within the constraints of your cage. Freedom, by its nature, is only obstructed by external forces. This leads me to conclude that God is a voluntarist. A voluntarist believes in the self-ownership of every individual, the inalienable rights of all people, and the principle that no person, group, or organization has, or can be granted, special rights. Rights are justifiable freedoms that must apply equally to everyone. Thomas Jefferson eloquently expressed this truth in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Jefferson's ideas stemmed from John Locke, who emphasized life, liberty, and property as fundamental rights. If all people have equal, inalienable rights, no one can rightfully be granted special powers over others. This dismantles the notion of governmental authority as we know it. So, if we are all free by nature, what actions are justifiable? Reason tells us that no one has the right to harm others or violate their rights intentionally. This is why the Declaration of Independence says governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed. Without individual consent, government authority is an affront to the God who created us equal. Voluntarism, at its core, rests on the non-aggression principle, which asserts that the initiation of aggression against another's person or property is never justifiable. This principle doesn't deny the right to defend oneself, but condemns initiating violence. Jesus encapsulated this philosophy when he taught that all the law and prophets could be summed up as, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. The second part, often called the Golden Rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, perfectly reflects voluntarism. God created us as equals, free to live life on our own terms. For this to work, we must honor each other's natural rights. Imposing on others, whether through personal actions or government authority, violates God's law. Even taxation, without consent, becomes extortion, a clear violation of universal principles. The government has no right to do what individuals cannot. Without consent, taxation is always theft. This is why I don't vote. While some argue voting is a right, it depends on the context. Voting to empower someone to violate my rights is not a right. It is aggression by proxy. No one has the right to initiate violence against me, nor to delegate that power to others. Some will say that it's the only system that we have, and we have to vote to make sure our rights are preserved. Well, how's that working out for you? Metaphorically, that is like telling Satan to give us 2 demons to choose from, and then voting for the demon who will do the least damage. I refuse to do that. Some argue that if I don't vote, I have no right to complain. This is an extremely flawed and unreasonable assertion. In reality, those who reject and refuse to participate in a system forced upon them have the strongest right to protest it. Conversely, it is those who willingly participate in and endorse the system who forfeit their right to complain about its outcomes, as they have actively supported its operation. With all that said, I also believe that in our current state, voluntarism cannot work. I'll say that again. In our current condition, voluntarism cannot work. But then again, neither can anything else. What is often called the liberty movement is always a colossal failure. There is only one reason for that. We don't honestly care about each other. We don't love our neighbor as ourselves. I firmly believe that God is a voluntarist, and creation reflects this truth. God is love, and all genuine love leads to God. Regardless of your ideology, Republican, Democrat, fascist, communist, or socialist, if you genuinely love your fellow man, your beliefs will eventually evolve into voluntarism. It is the only logical outcome, so it really doesn't matter where we begin. What matters is where we are headed. The bottom line is this: if we don't start caring for one another, hate and division will prevail. But if we truly care, the world will naturally evolve into a voluntarist society, which is the only society that can be pleasing to God. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to stay updated on the latest content. Until next time, may you find joy and prosperity in unexpected places, strength for every challenge, and grace in abundance. Thank you for being here today, and we'll see you in the next video.